we are candid. We talk straight talk. We tell people what we think. And that tradition and those values live today.
Are the source of all governmental power. That the authority of the people is to be extended. We believe, not restricted, in equality for all and privileges for none.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us at a Dem Good Time. I am Rachel, Communications Director for the Tarrant County Democratic Party, and of course, my co-hosts.
Hi, everybody. This is Iris Garcia. I'm the Executive Director here at TCDP, and special guest co-host is Miss Vicki. I'll call Spaniel. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Vicki. I am the Finance Director for the Tarrant County Democratic Party.
Give her all the monies.
Please.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Thank you. So let's just go over into like a few things that have been happening in the news. Very
just
minor.
A few? Just a few.
Not big, not a lot. Just a few.
Not a big deal whatsoever.
Yeah. So I know, right? So I think first we need to start with kind of the most. So the Prime Minister of Japan, the former Prime Minister of Japan, was assassinated.
Pretty big deal.
With a homemade gun.
Yes, it was homemade. I think one of the descriptions I read was that it was like a sawed-off shotgun type looking thing.
I think that's, yeah.
Which I'm not going to pretend to know all the mechanics on that. But, I mean, that's incredibly terrifying in my mind. You know, Japan has a lot of, they have very strict gun laws, very strict.
And the safest countries in the world. Right.
One of the safest. So, I mean, obviously that was the workaround because of the strict gun laws. They did work in preventing him from buying and acquiring one that way, which is far easier here in the U.S., as we've seen with recent shootings here. But to me, this is going to have ripple effects, I think. I think we don't really know the implications of it quite yet, but I really think this is going to give a lot of people pause about running for office, about serving the public, when that's, you know, that's the kind of thing you're going to worry about in somewhere as seemingly safe from that kind of gun violence and extremism as Japan seems to be.
Okay, so why do you feel that way? Tell me what your reasonings are for thinking, why is this a big deal in your opinion? Why is this a big deal? Why does America need to care?
So I think America needs to care because this does set a tone. It's going to set a tone for people here. I mean, look at the gun debate right now in Texas, right? We have permitless carry. We had law enforcement. Our Fort Worth Police Department told the state in no uncertain terms, hey, we don't want this. This makes our job harder. It makes it more difficult to police and, you know, and know like who's the shooter, who's just carrying because they can. It really does confuse the situation. And I think adding a layer of that now to the political violence that is implied with this assassination. I mean, that's what this is. This is political violence. They didn't like what he had to say. And even far worse to me that I haven't even touched on, I'm so sorry, is that the man that shot him was said to be quoting that he had heard online, tell me if this sounds familiar, y'all, that Shinzo Abe was part of a cabal of people trying to control the world, traffic people, traffic children, disinformation that has originated here is now spread worldwide. And that's not going to get less. Like the internet's not getting less used nowadays. It's getting more, like more things are going online.
Well, and I think I mean, I agree. I was just wanting you to get that out there. Actually, I just wanted you to say those words, because I have learned that the youngest generation are not as online involved, because they are, but they're not. You know what I'm saying?
They're online for sure.
Well, I mean, they're a little different about how they use it, how much they use it, why they, the reasons for being online. So I'm a little bit older than some of y'all here, you two, both of you. So I am
Iris is clearly the oldest.
Clearly, Iris.
That childlike, the baby face.
I'm internally like 75 years old, like in my soul.
Oh, well, physically, like my body has told me 100 is creeping up on me. But anyway, I remember, I'm going to date myself real quick. The computer lab was like one computer that each class got to take turns on, and we played Oregon Trail, and it was DOS based.
I remember Oregon Trail.
DOS based. And
I remember DOS.
I think Atari and Sega were like the thing. Again, DOS. Okay. Since that time, everyone knows, or should by now, no one has a secret. If we want to know something about you, it's online. And there's that commercial. Speaking of commercials, there was that commercial where the girl said, well, it's online, so it has to be true if it's online, right? If it's on the internet? No. Online does not make fact. I can find anything on the internet to
confirm your bias.
Whatever theory, rumor, conjecture. That does not make it true. It does not make it so. Someone should have told this dude before he assassinated someone. Just because it's on the internet does not make it true.
Well, I mean, like you're saying, there is the choice now on the internet of so many sites willing to cater to a bias. Even a more liberal bias. I mean, it's not just a right-wing thing. There are things popping up that are willing to cater to all extremes, across the spectrum of extremes, if you will. So that is kind of the worry. I mean, it is important to know your sources, to have a fuller picture of things, and not just seek out the things that confirm what you already want to believe. And that's growing harder in this era, and people are using that and weaponizing it. I mean, we saw it in 2016 with Russian disinformation helping then President Trump win. And it has continued. It has not lessened. It has gotten worse. So it is something we will be talking about, I'm sure, often on here. Your thoughts, Iris? It's okay. Okay, so moving on, let us talk about, finally, we had a White House response. Finally. Okay, now we're getting animated. We finally had a White House response with an executive order on protecting access to reproductive healthcare services from the Biden administration. So, yes. Thank you. Very excited about this. Very lengthy, very lovely.
Was going to have serious hostility if nothing happened.
Well, That's the thing. Let's talk, you know what? Let's talk about that. I think that's going to be actually a perfect thing to talk about. Okay. Because continue that thought.
So you cannot be president of the United States, the most powerful position. Yeah.
It's got some perks.
Without saying, okay, see, I have this ability to exert my status, my office with this thing that they call an executive order. If he hadn't used his seat for the people, because more people are pro-health choice, because that's what this comes down to. It is about our health.
It's healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And all we have done, what the Supreme Court did was interfere in our ability to receive treatment, healthcare, access to it. It is not the one thing. It is not abortion. It's not. It's about
control.
The government, yes, controlling our lives. And to all of the Republicans out there who are trash talking about how, communist healthcare, blah, 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 blah. What do you think you just did? Because what's the first thing? Someone with rheumatoid arthritis can't get their medication because what happened? Oh, has nothing to do with an abortion. Oh, okay. Well,
but can be prescribed for that purpose. Therefore, now suspect, now interfering with people's access to healthcare that they need, that they've been using long term.
So let's see. We need to go talk to our Republican people because we all know some bodies. We do. This is not about being pro-life. It's not. It is about giving the government way too much control. Way too much control. This isn't, it has nothing to do with abortion. I mean, you Republicans made it about abortion, but it's not even about abortion. Because who do you think is going to deliver babies now? We're going to have fewer doctors delivering babies because they don't want to take that on.
They don't want to take the risk.
No, their liability insurance is going to be ridiculous, and it already is. We won't be able to afford to have children. We won't have to worry about it.
I mean,
we're all going to just have,
We've already seen state officials saying that Texas is not prepared to have more children, more parents. We're not prepared to have. We're not prepared.
We don't have the infrastructure in place, and we have
now.
we have elected officials who are already telling people now is the time to step up for women and children in Texas. Now, not before they passed it, not getting prepared beforehand, not getting everything in place to be ready because they knew they wanted to do this on the shadow docket of the Supreme Court because they couldn't get it by popular vote. Not before all that. Now they're ready to show up. And I'm sorry, this is 20 damn years too late. Too late. You had time. You have not protected children in mass shooting after mass shooting. You have not protected our health care. You have let people die because we can't keep our grid up to snuff. So do not pretend it is about life. It is not. It is about control. And all of those Republicans, great point, Vicki and Iris, it's about control. It is about the big government telling everybody else, we want you to live your lives this way, our way.
That's right. Only that's right.
And I'm not okay with that.
No, I'm not either. And if it's about children,
it's not.
No, it's not. Let's talk about the other elephant in the room. How about all those kids that age out of the system?
Foster care?
With no support?
None. Nothing. I mean, nothing but the clothes on their back, if they're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
They get maybe a small grocery bag of clothes, if they're lucky. And they're not. There are so few lucky that age out. And what's going to happen to them? Because they showed when Roe v. Wade was passed that the crime rate was reduced because fewer children aged out and had to find a way to support themselves. There were fewer unwed single moms, trying to make ends meet, whose kids didn't have to go do whatever they had to do to help mom put food on the table or put food in their own mouth, forget the table at home. I mean, This is, I'm a little angry.
Well, and I gotta say, I mean, I'm glad the executive order has been put in place. I'm glad that he has done something, Biden, in this case.
I would have been so mad, just saying, again.
Right. But I don't know about y'all, but it's appeared to me like it's been a little bit of a struggle for the Biden administration to figure out how to respond to this. And so I think that's kind of what's more interesting to me, is that it's been a struggle because the Supreme Court decision, I mean, it really has thrown things into chaos. And I think that's kind of the conversation that's not happening, in the fact that, the whole idea of federalism, okay, the whole idea behind why we have a Supreme Court, why we have courts in general, is to play referee, right? But the Supreme Court, the highest court of our land, is supposed to be a check when states overstep. We have the Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments that were added to the Constitution are considered the Bill of Rights, written by James Madison. And the idea is that these are the basic things you can count on, whether you're in New York, Texas, California, Wyoming, Florida, it does not matter. You are entitled to these rights, and even the ones we forgot to name, right? There's enumerated and unenumerated rights. And even the ones that they forgot to list don't magically go away. You still have them, but they have to be litigated. They have to be discussed. And as a society, we define that line. And the Supreme Court with this decision has basically said, we're going to turn it back over to the states. Well, how is that going to work? How does that work in practicality? Because again, there are a multitude of reasons, as Iris and I have discussed on a previous in-depth conversation about this. When you have a miscarriage, what does that procedure look like? It looks like an abortion. It looks, because it's healthcare. And, allowing non-experts and allowing legislators who have a very extremist agenda. I mean, let's not forget Tony Tinderholt in 2019 proposed a bill that would make it a capital crime for a woman to get an abortion. So that means that women could face the death penalty. Right? That was 2019. That's not that far off ago. So how does that work? Like, you want to access healthcare because you miscarried. And then if the Republicans get their way, they can punish you by death for trying to access healthcare. Like, that's why we need these protections. That's why we have the Supreme Court to say, no, 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 no. You may be against abortion personally, but you don't get to dictate somebody else's life based on your religious beliefs or your personal beliefs.
Yeah, well.
And that, like, they
didn't do it.
Throwing away that, like, they are trying to erase that line as quickly as possible. And I'm sorry, I don't want to live in a theocracy. No, thank you. No.
I keep going back to this. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter. Again, God forbid anything horrible happen to anybody's child, but if anything happened to her and ended up pregnant, that and any other precious baby, any other pregnant woman has to wait 9 months, endure 9 more months of a living hell before they even begin to consider healing. That's inhumane. That is inhumane.
I don't think only one half of the population should be allowed freedom of choice in their lives, in everything. Men do not have a law in the books that dictates their healthcare choices, period. End of sentence. They don't have it.
I mean, I say, if we're going to do tit for tat, then I think men who rape others, no, they should not be
eunuchs.
No.
I'm kidding. I'm so kidding. That is cruel and unusual punishment, which is one of the good things, I think, from our Constitution. If we'd actually.
Well, then we won't say what was really on my mind.
Oh.
Is it not cruel punishment to force me to have a child?
No, that's what I'm saying. It is cruel and unusual punishment. And so if we were going to do tit for tat, then I think proper punishment, I mean, they could keep their appendage. It just might not work. Oh, I would make sure it didn't work.
We're kidding, of course, for legal purposes.
Oh, well, hey, look, I'm not a professional.
That's true.
Political professional in this area, so it's just my opinion. I'm just saying, if we're going to do tit for tat, then I say women get to decide what happens to a man who rapes them.
Yeah,
since
again,
we have
though,
to carry on and have children.
We'd have to actually have better prosecution here in Texas of rapists, and we actually don't. Even though Greg Abbott promised to address that when asked.
Oh well, it's going to eliminate. It's going to eliminate rape anyway. Isn't that what he said? It's going to eradicate rape.
And he hasn't actually done that. No.
But the heartbeat bill was supposed to eradicate rape. Magically. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Iris, did you want to expand? I thought maybe you had more thoughts.
I'd like to repeal his election, but okay.
Well, we can vote.
That's right.
Oh, we're definitely going to vote him out. I am anyway. Yes.
Hells yeah.
We need legislators who will actually stand up for our rights.
So have y'all, okay, I know I'm the news junkie. Have y'all seen the Texas Freedom Caucus letter?
Yeah.
I've not. Tell me about it.
Okay. So the Texas Freedom Caucus, okay, again, this is supposedly the party of limited government and, you know, not overreach and all the things.
Socialism and communism.
Yeah,
and we're just supposed to, whatever.
Yes. So they have written, and they have written to a, so the Texas Freedom Caucus wrote a letter, and they are upset because private companies want to fund and pay for their employees to go out of state if necessary to get health care, abortion care. Because again, abortion is health care.
Yep.
How is that limited government? Telling a private company what they can and can't do to support their employees.
I mean, they couldn't tell a private company
to fix the grid, weatherize.
Well, okay, that too. But they couldn't tell a private company that they could not require their employees to wear a mask during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was overreaching.
Too far. It's too far.
But
this isn't overreach.
I think it's all overreaching, but whatever.
Make it make sense. So, okay. So they're proposing, here's what they want to pass. Here's what they want to legislate. All right. So all my libertarians out there in the ether listening that might come across this, please explain the limited government principle of this. All right. First, it's going to prohibit any employer for paying for an elective abortion or reimbursing abortion-related expenses. Now, again, abortion is health care. They're using the word elective to be careful with their language, but it's health care. Okay. This provision will impose a felony criminal sanctions on anyone who pays for these abortions to ensure that it remains enforceable against self-insured plans. Blah, 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 blah. Legalese, basically. Second, it will allow private citizens to sue anyone who pays for an elective abortion performed on a Texas resident. So they want to control us even if we're out of state.
It's an extension of SB 8.
Even if we're out of state, if I go to another state, another country, and I do whatever the hell I want there, I'm sorry, Texas, my Texas government, that's not your business. It's not your business. It is. I don't think it should be. Y'all's thoughts? I mean, that's really that simple for me.
Oh, I agree.
Like if I go to Colorado, it's not your business what I do there.
I mean,
no offense. No offense, employer. Not your business.
No, I mean,
it is not.
No, you deserve your personal privacy. I'm not the government here. Enjoy your personal privacy.
I mean, I just the first Republican pro-lifer who doesn't get to choose his wife over that unborn child, the first Republican pro-lifer. I can't wait for that.
You know,
who doesn't get to choose his wife, who would choose his wife over an unborn child. I keep saying that because, it's an unborn child. Okay. And that unborn child is going to mean a lot less to you than your wife when you find out that is a high-risk pregnancy and you will most likely lose your wife. How do you get the right? How does any man get the right to tell me I can't choose to live and be a parent? How do you
see, but it shouldn't come to that, right?
But that's what it's come to.
I know, but that's the problem with the people we're electing, right? We need We need balance. We don't have balance. We've had 20 years of Republican rule. And unfortunately, until something happens to them or close enough to them, that's when they care. And I'm tired of that. I want elected officials who look and sound and know about our experiences and our lives, know what it's like to struggle paycheck to paycheck. Because you know what? I feel like we've all been there at some point. There's
or living there now, you know,
right?
There are a lot of us living there now.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and say, we can all fix this, y'all. Go vote. It is not that we have purposely elected these people. It's that so many
have opted out
of voting, that these people have been able to stay in office. So
there are 271,000 and some change registered, already done the hard part. Okay. Because it is hard to register sometimes in Texas. We don't have online registration. We should. There are 271,000 registered right now voters who opted not to vote in 2020. And
where?
In Tarrant County.
County.
In our county, just our county. And if we get those 271,000 registered voters, plus register some new voters, but even if we don't, if we just get them to go vote, that could flip our county, but it flips the state. Not just our county, the state.
The state.
And guess what? Governor Beto O'Rourke, SB 8, gone. Okay? Permitless carry, amended and fixed so it's not crazy and just a free-for-all, right? Property taxes, lower, a grid that is not awful in both the heat and the winter and the cold.
Year round.
Yes, please. Thank you. Yes, please.
I didn't even share this earlier, but my electricity went out on Saturday. Yeah, it went out at 9 p.m. and I went onto the Encore outage website. They said it'd be back by 10:30. 10:30 rolls around. It's not back on. It's 85 degrees inside my house.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're supposed to have it up on 80 anyway. You were fine. Go ahead.
This is before the possible shortage.
Yeah, that was before. That was last night. That was Sunday.
Yeah, so this happened on Saturday.
It's not a good sign.
No, we just kind of gave up. We were like, it'll come back on. Let's just go to sleep. Well, we went to sleep. We hear banging at 4:30 in the morning because the electrician people have to get into our backyard to go to our breaker box.
Yeah.
Because apparently it just blew up. Oh. Yeah. Luckily there was no fire or anything. But our whole little electric thing went out. So they had to get into our backyard, replace it. It just goes to show there's a lot of infrastructure things with the electricity that need to be fixed.
Oh yes. My internet, this is just personal little gripe.
Yeah.
I'm going to feel so first world problems saying this. But our internet lines are old, so they're all raised. So squirrels chew through them all the time. Yeah. And if the tiniest little drop of water or condensation gets on there, it ruins it for the whole block. The new modern ways to bury the lines, I would very much like that. Just saying.
Yeah. Me too. See, because during that freeze-ageddon we got, our lines.
Oh no.
Yeah. All of it. Because, our power lines and internet and phone and all of that. Yeah. So good times. Good times.
Yeah.
Life sucked.
So back to the abortion discussion, because I forgot to mention this, but there was a viral thing going around about this woman in Texas, this pregnant woman in Texas, driving in the HOV lane and getting pulled over by a police officer and saying, well, it should count. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I thought it was funny, honestly. At first I was like, why are you doing this? But then I thought about it more, and well, if the state is saying my pregnancy is already a child, then yeah, I should qualify for the HOV, and I should be getting child support from the second I'm pregnant. That's, if the state wants to play that game, I'll play that game too.
Okay, so if you're going to set precedent, be prepared for the backlash.
Yeah.
Be prepared for it. If you're going to do something stupid, be prepared for someone to come back and show you how stupid you are by saying, got an unborn with me.
Here's my worry.
I'm driving with two.
Here's my worry.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
I mean, I might get in trouble. The officer who pulled the woman over, was that a male or a female?
I don't know.
Let a man carry a baby around and not say, there's a human inside me. It counts. Well, either it counts or it doesn't. Pick.
Here's my worry.
They can eat it too?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. Roe was precedent, as you put, right? They're setting a new precedent. Roe was precedent. And it was the idea that individuals, in this case, mostly it's talking about females, women. Back when it was decided in 1973.
Uterine carrying.
Yes. But the point was that you had a right to privacy. You had a right over and control over yourself, right? The government didn't get to have forced birth policies. Now they do. Now they do. Because they overturned precedent despite Kavanaugh, Barrett, Gorsuch, Clarence Thomas, all of them being on the record in confirmation hearings saying they respected precedent and stare decisis. They don't. They've shown us that. So this is the next front. This is the next thing that's going to happen. And we're already seeing it with that Texas Freedom Caucus letter of declaring fetal personhood. And I'm sorry, a fetus inside of a person should not have more rights than the person.
Okay.
And that to me is another layer of control, and I am not okay with that.
No, I'm not okay with it. And it was a male.
Funny, I find it very, yes, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I did
it was a male officer.
I did find it very concerning because, again, I am a news junkie, and on the opposite side, on the extreme right, that's the next push is fetal personhood.
Yeah, and it's just it's going to worsen. It might worsen our chances of getting protection for abortion if we continue this narrative of, well, actually.
Yeah, I don't want to keep pretending because as I saw a tweet from I don't remember who it was, but I liked the tweet because it was a succinct way to put it. You know, if you see me standing there holding a petri dish with a fertilized egg and a 2-year-old, and I'm going to drop both at the same time, which one are you going to help?
Okay.
I think you're going to try.
And thank you. Please and thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
This is already interfering with IVF. Like, this is going to get worse again.
Don't even get me started on IVF. Don't get me started. Okay. That will be my trigger right there. Y'all know. Okay. So I have said, so for anyone who doesn't know, my background is almost 18 years in the medical field doing medical billing and collections until 2018. What happened to HIPAA?
Good
I
question.
mean,
Yeah, because
I've been asking this, like, I've been asking this since it seriously was going before the Supreme Court. I'm like, what happened to HIPAA?
Yeah.
This is my personal, private health information. There are still, I mean, how do you get to say something if you're not even supposed to know about it? Because I didn't sign anything for anybody to release anything to anybody. So, I mean, I don't even know, because HIPAA. I'm just still stuck on HIPAA. It's nobody's business.
But see,
you're not supposed to know.
Again, the Supreme Court having no real, like, it's turned into whatever they personally can get six justices to say they agree with and like, are into the flavor of the moment, right? That we can't govern ourselves this way because there's
know what this is?
There's no consistency.
This is extreme Democrat versus extreme Republican. It is Democrat versus Republican. That's it. This has nothing to do with us. You know, we the people. Heaven forbid it be about we the people. It is, I want my way and you're not going to get yours. And because
politicized the court.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it is
partisanship fully, harshly into the courts.
Yeah. That's exactly what this has nothing to do with pro-life or pro-choice, or it has zero jack to do with any of that. It is about, we got our way, you don't get yours. I win, you lose.
I mean, that's what the Tangerine Tyrant ran on, was owning the lubes. Mm-hmm. And it's really, it's not supposed to be about any of that. It's supposed to be about governing. It's supposed to be about how you can improve people's lives.
Term limitations, folks. Term limits. That's what I'm all about.
20 years under Republicans. Now, that brings me to my next point. Because we do have to wrap this up.
Yes.
So we got to vote. And I know that's not the most satisfying answer, but here's why. Okay.
Why does it have to be satisfying? Why can't it just be?
Well, here's reality.
Go vote.
Okay. Here's reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Biden can do an executive order, but that's all he can do right now, because we have Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema who would rather preserve the filibuster. But it's not just those two, because those are the two that we all name because they're Democrats and we're angry with them, rightfully so. But it's 50. It's those two plus 50. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's those two plus all the Republicans, the John Cornyn, the Ted Cruz, the Ben Sass, all of them, the Susan Collins.
Susan. I have feelings about her.
The Lisa Murkowskis, all the ones that like to pretend that they have some independence. But it is all of them towing the party line and preserving the filibuster, which is very anti-democracy. Okay. Because they are elected by a majority, but then they're asking to, in order to do their job, they need a super majority, which is just, it's stupid, right? So we can't pass it at a national level. We can't codify it yet, but we do have an opportunity. But the best thing we could do is codify it at the state level. That's the best thing we can do, because here's why. We've seen the Supreme Court. They don't care about precedent. It does not matter. However, they do care about states' rights. They are willing to go back to that old favorite of theirs, that comfy chair of theirs, and say all about states' rights. So here's what we do. We tell our state, it's time you stand up for our rights. And Republicans for 20 years have shown they are willing to chip away at those rights. They're willing to punish and hurt people in their everyday lives instead of helping. So we elect people that are going to help. We elect people that are going to codify it and say, you know what? Your right to privacy, your right to love who you love, your right to get health care, whatever that may look like, is totally up to you. And we're not going to let big government come in here and tell you how it is. And that's what we do right now. With
non-voters have allowed what's happening to us to happen to us. Their lack of engagement, their lack of performing civic duties have gotten us here.
Well, I mean, we do have to acknowledge reality.
That's my personal opinion. That's my personal opinion.
But we also do talk about, you know, there are barriers being erected to voting constantly.
Oh, yes.
The rule changing and the constant drumbeat of, you know, election integrity. We've had safe elections. We've had Republicans elected for 20 years. So
none of them have cried until recently.
Huh?
I said none of them have been crying until recently, and that's only because of Trump. But whatever.
But we have the power to do something in 2022. Electing people up and down the ballot. Okay, it's not just up the ballot, right? In the Supreme Court decision, Clarence Thomas, he referenced Lawrence v. Texas. That's what struck down the anti-sodomy laws that were here in Texas that were trying to get police into people's bedrooms to tell them you may not have anal sex or oral sex, which, by the way, straight couples do that too. So, spoiler alert.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It can be fun to mix. Anyway,
hey.
That's another pod.
Yeah.
We'll get into that
next week for a really dim good time. Just kidding.
Okay. It's PG. It's all PG. But the whole point is they're coming after Lawrence. They're coming after Obergefell because those were based on the precedent set by Roe, that right to privacy, that individual right to make your own choices. And here's why down ballot matters so much. You've got county clerks, district clerks that are going to either issue those marriage certificates or they're going to refuse and say based on their personal beliefs. I mean, do y'all remember what was her name from Kentucky? I think Kim.
I know who you're talking about, the person who denied the marriage license.
Right. For weeks on end, did a whole publicity stunt with Trump and Huckabee and the whole thing. Right. They're elected. We have Democrats on the ballot. They will issue those. They will provide that government service to constituents as they're supposed to.
Where does your down ballot start? With which seat?
Well, I think it depends on the person.
So
there's a lot of
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
So we mentioned down the ballot a lot because a lot of people go to the ballot box. They usually just vote for the top first person,
like governor, lieutenant governor,
maybe the top three,
maybe Texas AG.
Yeah, and we saw this happen with Biden in 2020. We flipped Tarrant County blue for Biden, but a lot of our down ballot races suffered because a lot of people were just going to vote for president, not worried about.
Skipped the rest of it.
Yeah, but all of those other lower offices, like I'm trying to remember what was on 2022 or 2020 or 2020.
Well, let's
state rep,
county clerk, district attorney,
justice of the
peace.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
all of these offices are vital.
Yes, because your county judge is not a judge. They run your county. They're like your county governor.
Yeah.
And people need to realize what these seats mean to you, how they affect you personally, because once you have to deal with that kind of stuff, once you realize that you are dealing with those seats, those elected officials, maybe they'll become more important to you. But your air quote county governor is your county judge, and we need to get out there and vote. But your state rep, for anybody who doesn't know, your state representative is your lawmaker, your state lawmaker. They are your legislatures who write your state law, who wrote in that anybody could just, open carry and no big deal. And you don't have to have any training. You don't even have to know. We don't even care if you know how to fire a gun. Just go buy one. You can run around like, John Wayne in Texas. Jeez.
Which this is a perfect opportunity to segue and say, we are going to have a wonderful interview with a HD 94 state rep candidate, Dennis Sherrard, coming up. So make sure you listen for the whole thing. It's very enlightening. Dennis does a great job of really talking through, his priorities, which honestly are my priorities. I want my grid fixed. I want my property taxes to be stable and reasonable. I want the state to really have a robust public education fund.
Yeah. I'm really excited for the candidates we have. I think they're very strong in what they stand for, and they are standing up for the things that are really up in the news right now.
Yeah.
And beyond that, of course.
Yes.
But we have some strong candidates.
Got some
we really do. We have a lot of strong candidates. We do. Yeah. I'm excited. I can't wait for Dennis.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that I think is going to wrap it up. Let's see. What reminders do we have coming up? Oh, July 30th.
Yes.
I know I'm doing a karate chop here. July 30th, we have our back to school supply drive and candidate forum. So join us at the local, and that should be a good thing. Good time.
Yes. Dem Good Time.
We will be live show as well, but we would love to have you in person along with any unopened new school supplies. We're trying to help people. The pandemic is not over. People are still in recovery mode. So we just really want to do any little thing we can to help in our community. So join us. It's a good cause. Informative. Should be fun.
Yes.
What else
Absolutely.
we got?
Join us. We got a Dem Good birthday bash or something, I think is what I heard. What is that? What August?
We're going to be having a fun little fundraiser.
August 10th. We're having a
celebrate a couple of birthdays.
All of our jefes, the big dogs. We have our county chair, Allison Campolo.
Yes.
Our vice chair. Yes. Our vice chair, Kendall Locke.
Yes, Kendall.
And our executive director, Iris Garcia, all have birthdays in August. So we actually have
a fourth birthday that you might not know about. Candace, our newest financial assistant. Yeah.
Yes, she is. She is. She is an amazing addition to us. Yes, I love my Candace.
Another
shout out to her wife.
Shout out
the producer of this podcast.
Yes, but we are going to be at Salsa Limon Museo, August 10th. We will get some information out to you guys. And
if you're not signed up for the bulletin brief, sign up. We'll include information there.
Yes, and come celebrate their birthdays with us and help us raise funds to get out there and register more folks to vote. Get more of these amazing candidates elected in November. Yes. Okay, so I guess we need to get ready for Dennis. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Do you want to do the honors, our executive director?
Yeah,
sure. Telling everybody about our guests.
Yeah, we're very excited to have our first candidate guest on our podcast today. We have Dennis Sherrard, who is running for House District 94 here in Texas.
Hey, guys, it's great to be with you. And may I say, what cool digs you guys have now. Really nice to come over to the party at Caucus.
We're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Happy to be here.
So first kind of, let's just start with this. Tell us about yourself. Are you a dad? Are you a granddad? Like what's in your world?
Yes, I am a dad. I have 3 children, ages 35, 31, and 28. And as a Father's Day, I am a pending granddad.
How exciting.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Congrats. Congrats.
My youngest
Yay.
daughter told me Father's Day I'm going to have a grandson.
Oh,
Well, happy Father's Day to you. Wow.
Great day.
that's so awesome.
That was.
And she has no idea what trouble is coming because
Oh.
granddad is going to conspire heavily to make her life exciting.
Oh,
I
great.
foresee a very spoiled grandchild.
Oh, yes.
If that's what I'm picking up on, is
Very
a
much so.
very spoiled
Very much
grandchild.
so.
Okay.
And
Well-
you were saying that your family has been here in Texas for a couple generations?
Yeah, 4 or 5. I think probably 4. But, you know, people came to Texas seeking opportunity or fleeing the law. And I think my ancestors were fleeing the latter. So we had some pretty shady dudes in our background. Came here, and my great-great-grandfather, I think, was the original guy. So, anyway, we are coming out of the Carolinas, principally, is where my strength comes from in terms of my dad's side. My mother's side, a couple of generations as well, but her father was actually born in Mississippi, and then they migrated. They all lived in really kind of north central Texas in the Waco Hill County area.
Okay.
And then my mom and dad, born in or married in Waco in the mid 1950s, migrated to Dallas, and then I arrived in 1959. So I have a brother, my sibling, and he's my younger brother. Not too little anymore, but anyway, he's down in the Austin area. He's got 3 kids as well, and so we have a whole big passel of family in the Sherrard brood.
Very fun.
Awesome.
Vicki, any questions you want to throw out there? You look like you had one.
Well, why run for office? Why this office?
Why get in this crazy business?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
That is the question.
well, I've been doing it for a long, long time. My first campaign that I worked on, this is going to give my age away a little bit, but I was stuffing envelopes for George McGovern for president in 1972.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You got that
And
experience.
So my family has always been heavily involved politically. They were both very active where I grew up, which was Mesquite, Texas. Precinct chairs, election judges. My dad ran for city council. I ran his first campaign for city council when I was 19. I ran a state representative candidacy when I was 19, and have been involved ever since. My career kind of made me politically adjacent for a while, but I've spent the last 30, 40 years active in Democratic politics as a speechwriter, a consultant, advisor, campaign manager, and now candidate. As to why, the real reason why is because we have a government that's failed us in Texas. So for the last 20 plus years, the Republicans have been in control, and we've seen nothing except decline in the quality of life metrics that we have here. So things are more expensive. It's tougher to get health care. Our education system's been failing our children. Our poverty rate hasn't gone down at all. Our incarceration rate has gone up, and so has our gun violence rate. And so there's a lot of things that need to change. And since I came out of the corporate business world and used to run a fairly large business unit, if I had people working for me that had that kind of performance, I would fire them and replace them with somebody competent. And so that's why I'm running.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes.
Endorsed. I love it. I love
Yes.
it. I mean, speaking of, though, you make a great point. Just yesterday, I don't know about y'all, but I saw the notice about asking Texans to conserve energy because it's so hot, and our grid is not enough. It is not up to snuff.
So it's kind of galling when you're the single largest energy producer in the nation, right? Probably in the top 10 in the world. To have to tell people that you need to set your thermostats at 80 degrees so we can keep our failing infrastructure somewhat alive. Meanwhile, all those guys are raking in record profits. Meanwhile, they're not doing any kind of maintenance on the infrastructure, which is why we have to put thermostats up. Once again, it shows the incompetence and the indifference of the people in charge. As long as they can make their money and hit their profit number, that's really all they're concerned about. And everybody else can kind of fend for themselves.
So Am I hearing you would repeal the Abbott tax that is currently on all of our electric bills?
Well, exactly. See, we have regulatory bodies that work for, or supposedly work for the citizens of Texas. Right now, they work for the business interests in Texas. The Railroad Commission is in charge of kind of managing the energy aspect of our state, right? And as such, they've got the ability to sanction people that violate and don't comply with regulations. And what have they done? They basically slapped the energy producers on the wrist. And so that often the structure of the stuff. Come back and tell us that you got no sanction hanging over their head that says we're going to fine you into the Stone Age if you don't get this stuff fixed. And all the costs for fixing all that infrastructure, it's not being borne by the producers and the companies or the regulatory commission like ERCOT. It's being borne by the ratepayers. And so the cost to winterize from the freeze in February of 2021 is being added on to your utility bills and will be for the next 20 or 30 years unless that changes. So yeah, the legislature needs to get in there and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to come back. And you guys that need all these windfall profits during this time frame, about $11 billion in natural gas profits during this time frame, guess what? We want that back.
Well, you know, during that freeze, where did Cruz go? So since it's hot, where's he going to go this year?
Well, you know, he's already done one of these bailouts when there was a weather advisory coming in on the Texas Gulf Coast, anticipating some pretty bad weather in Houston. Guess where he was? He was in Nassau, Bahamas, closely monitoring the situation. Yeah. So, you know, the other thing at the national level, we need to get rid of these people that are occupying the Senate seats at the national level as well. We can't do that for a couple of years, but in the meantime, we can get control of the legislature. We can get Mike Collier as lieutenant governor, Beto O'Rourke as governor, Michelle Garza as AG. We can start to rectify some of the problems that have been going on for a long time.
Yeah. Well, you kind of touched on something I wanted to ask about rectifying the problems we've been facing. And I'm very grateful that you've been very vocal about abortion access. It's a huge topic right now, especially with the reversal of Roe v. Wade. What would you see yourself doing about abortion access?
Well, the first thing I would do, and when I get elected, one of the first bills I'm going to introduce into the legislature is a bill that essentially codifies Roe v. Wade.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now, this is a really important issue, and I realize that there are many people of goodwill that are on either side of this issue, and I think that's fine. But the problem is that the majority of people in this state want Roe codified. The numbers are 80 or 85, 90%. We're supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to be working for the will of the people at large. All codifying Roe v. Wade does is give you a choice. And those that don't like abortion and don't want to have an abortion, they don't have to have one. But the people that need one, they can gain access to it without becoming a criminal. And that's what we should be focusing on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being such a strong advocate. We really appreciate it.
Yes, for sure. So I guess what I'm gathering from that is that you truly do view abortion, it is a very personal choice, but it is essentially, at the end of the day, it's healthcare. And it's whether or not somebody can access that healthcare. And I know you've talked a little bit about expansion of Medicaid. Do you want to talk some more about healthcare, kind of veering off into that instead?
So this is a serious problem in the state. We are the worst insured state in the nation. When you think about that, there are 30 million people that live in this state. So that's about 10% more or less of the overall population. And we're the worst relative to insurance access. When the ACA was passed in 2010 and it became law, they provided funding for every state in the nation to expand their Medicaid services. And Texas's part in that was upwards of around $10 billion a year. So since that period of time, we have ignored this purely for a political reason. First Rick Perry, then Greg Abbott. And why? Both of these guys have presidential aspirations, and they want to run against the bad socialized medicine, which is this is anything but, right? All it does is provide the avenues for people to get access to health care. upwards of 1.2 million people would be immediately covered in terms of being able to go see a doctor if we expanded Medicaid. And what does that mean? That means if you're a parent and you've got children and you've been kicking the can down the road because they've got an ear infection and you can't go to the clinic and pay the $160 to get the amoxicillin and get the infection taken care of, guess what? That problem is going to get worse and then worse and then worse. And maybe it's going to lead to ruptured eardrum. Maybe it's going to lead to some deafness. And then they're looking at a cochlear ear implant, which is going to be thousands of dollars to rectify the situation. The $45 visit and dose of amoxicillin would have avoided. So we can't treat the people in this state like this because they can't afford to pay it. That doesn't include the people that have already got health insurance, which is made more expensive because we haven't expanded Medicaid, because the hospitals have to pass the costs on for indigent care over to the insurance companies. They wind up paying less on their claims. You pay more out of pocket. Not only that, people that have got insurance with their corporations, they only have so much insurance, right? And so they're one step away. People have done everything right all their life. Let's say they're in their mid-50s, everything right all their life. Kept up all their insurance, they pay their taxes, they salute their flag, they go to church and all that. You know, one member in that family gets cancer. They are in difficult straits because if that cancer goes on and on and on and requires treatment, it can bankrupt them. They can lose their home, they can break up their families and so on. We cannot nationally continue this. It's not sustainable from a state perspective. The best thing we can do is expand Medicaid and then start to look at something like California is starting to do, which is a state-based Medicare for all system. At a minimum, you allow them to buy into coverage at a much, much cheaper level. Think about the people that are working there. A significant number of those folks do not carry insurance. They need an ability to buy into something that's much cheaper than the current marketplace does, because Texas doesn't. It's on exchange. I'm on the federal exchange right now myself, and my insurance is very expensive. So we've got to find a way to reduce some of those costs, and we can do that by first expanding Medicaid and then attacking some of the major cost causers legislatively, such as capping drug pricing and things like that within the state. And we can't do that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good answer. Expanding healthcare in Texas is really, really important. And we see in rural areas, there's a huge disparity and need for healthcare and hospitals. What are your ideas around rural healthcare?
Well, first of all, I reopened the 26 hospitals that have been closed over the last 10 years because of the lack of funds. That's the first thing. Right now, people that live in counties that aren't host for large urban areas like Dallas-Tarrant County or Travis County or Harris County, sometimes people have to travel upwards for an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to a hospital. And if you think about that for a minute, somebody that's in a critical care situation, that's problematic. Quite often, if there's an automobile accident, let's say out in the middle of West Texas on one of the interstates, what will happen is that a patient, if they're going to be transported to the hospital, will be life-flighted. Those things are incredibly expensive. So one of the first things that I would try to do is make sure that we have sufficient medical services, ambulatory services, where they've got trauma care units in each county, right? That would be the first thing. The second thing that I would do would make sure that we have a robust telemedicine system that is supported within the state. Right now, what we have is emerging. It's coming together. There is an existing telemedicine system. Most of it, though, is through the networks of the various care providers. So, as an example, my GP works for the John Peter Smith group, and so telemedicine is through a network within JPS. Well, my neighbor, he doesn't go to those guys. He goes to Harris Methodist, right? He's telemedicine used to do that. If you don't have a regular GP and your doctor visits are based on going to a clinic, then you don't have access to those kinds of services. So it's very difficult to get to a telemedicine environment that is accessible for everybody. So we should take a look at something like that, because you can get very, very quick diagnosis on things like the child's ear infection we were talking about before, right? They don't have to get in the car and drive for an hour and a half to go to see the doctor. They can get this done. they get their script written, they go to their pharmacy, and they pick up their antibiotics, right? And so you can really alleviate a lot of burden on people that don't have easy access to healthcare facilities in that way.
So true. Another big topic, and you've already touched on it a little bit when you started at the beginning, was gun violence, and there has been an uptick. So there's been this big conversation happening, mostly very loudly and obnoxiously, I think, my personal opinion, about gun violence, but needing to kind of balance that with police. And, on the extreme one side, there's maybe defund the police being loudly shouted and talked about. A lot of that's Republican noise. But it is a concern. It is a concern for people because of that. So how do you balance that? How do you address gun violence without over-policing or do you look at changing that relationship with police? Like, how do you view that topic? How do you tackle that?
Well, I think there's a bunch of threads to pull on that.
Okay.
So let's start with the first one. Let's start with the police, right? No, we shouldn't defund the police. What we should do is get bad cops out of the system and start to talk about how do you do a better job of working in the community to prevent violence from occurring, because 90+% of law enforcement's job is reactive. You get a call, you go to a call, you respond to a call, right? One of the things that we've seen where certain models have worked better, there have been experiences. Bill Bratton, who's former commissioner of police in New York and Los Angeles, has done a lot of really good writing and research on this. And the biggest thing that he believes is you got to first of all build a level of credibility between the law enforcement organizations and the community at large, right? You do that in a few ways. First of all, people that are law enforcement officers in a jurisdiction should probably live in that jurisdiction, right? It makes some sense, right? Because you get to know people. Right. Community policing is a next level event of that, right? So a beat cop would give a sign perhaps in the neighborhood where he lives in, or she lives in. Community engagement, there are community security engagements and things like that interface with police that also should be supported and built up. Community oversight of the police should be supported. One of the biggest problems that we have right now is that, maybe for really good reasons, police unions across the country have gotten a lot of power, and they have forced cities and communities into a set of behaviors that avoid things like allowing a police officer to be civilly liable for any kind of damage or injury that they cause, right? And again, there may be some good reasons around that, but what it's done is create something called qualified immunity. So if a police officer in the course of his duties assaults or injures somebody, they use extraordinary force where they didn't need to do that, and so on. That person is shielded from any kind of civil immunities, right? So we should probably start to take a look at some things like that, so the bad actors get moved out of the system. The other thing with respect to law enforcement that we've got to do is that there's a lot of weight on their shoulders. They get called out for everything, from mental health issues to domestic issues to, obviously more serious crimes like robberies in process or a shooting or things like that. Right. They're not mental health experts. They're becoming that on the job, right? I talk to police officers quite a bit, but there's a lot of these issues that they have to deal with that would be better served by somebody that's got some expertise in that space. So why do we put that burden on them? Well, it's because we typically have not funded the medical services and health services in our area sufficiently enough to put people that can go respond to, let's say, somebody that's been off their meds, as an example, that they can go see that. There's been some work done in some communities that have shown when you allow those kinds of folks, those levels of proficiencies to have first calls, or perhaps go in collaboration with a law enforcement officer, the acts of anything escalating into a violent
police interaction
drop significantly. So we really need to take a look at those kinds of things. So I don't think we need to defund anything. I think we need to look about where we put some of our money. I think we need to focus on making sure that the guys that are causing the problems inside the force, the guys and the girls that are causing problems inside the force, that they're moved out, they're cycled out, because There are a lot of really good police officers out there that feel like they've got to stay tight-lipped on what they see because there's a cost to doing that. If you do that, it can hurt your career. It could even hurt you physically based on some of the blowback that you might get. So that's the law enforcement side. Now on the gun violence side. Okay, someone once said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results, right? So in 2020, which is the last time we got really good data, we had a little over 4,000 gun violence deaths in Texas. Okay, 2/3 of those typically are suicides, right? So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that the pathway that the Republicans have been on pretty much for the last 20 years, which is to loosen gun laws in the state, is not helping the situation with respect to gun violence. We see more and more, shootings, more and more mass shootings that pop up, like the recent one in Uvalde, Sutherland Springs, El Paso, Odessa. You can roll them off the tip of your tongue, which is horrifying to even think about, right? Yeah. So we've got to do something about reining that in. Now, what I would do, what I said before, is first of all, we need to get rid of assault weapons. We just do. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we need to raise the acquisition age of purchasing any weapon up to at least 21. Now, I've raised 3 children. When they were 18, I would be horrified to go buy them a gun. When I was 18, I didn't have enough sense to be carrying a gun around, okay? But the law today says essentially you can go buy this and you can pretty much, without any training, without me knowing that you have the weapon, carry it anywhere you want because they have perverted the meaning of the Second Amendment to assume that everybody should be armed all the time, and that's not what it says. So we need to focus on making sure that we have some limitations to provide some barriers for people that aren't responsible enough to be having these things in the first place, so they can't get their hands on them and they can't act out and conduct these mass massacres for one, but also cause problems to their families. The majority of gun violence victims in this country and in this state are people that are shot by somebody they know. Mm-hmm. Usually it's a family member. And we have way too many children finding their mother or father's pistol in a purse or in a dresser drawer with their sibling and winding up shooting that. So if you're not responsible enough to lock that gun away, you probably shouldn't have it in the first place. But all of that has to face up with the reality that we have 400 million guns in this country. In the last 3 years, we sold something like 40 million more weapons. In the state of Texas, we're
one of the most armed.
1 million guns away. Well, in the pro-gun lobby would tell you that an armed society is a polite society, but the statistics belie that because if you had 3,600 gun violence deaths in 2019 and 4,000 plus gun violence deaths in 2020, there were more weapons purchased from 2019 to 2020, hence more people, more polite. No, we lost more folks. So maybe we should try another approach. So let's limit who has access to these things. Let's bring back the licensing and training. I would even go a step further. I want you to register that weapon. You register your car.
Yeah.
Why can't you register your weapon? I think it's a little bit ludicrous to suggest that you can do that because you're staving off government tyranny. No. The majority of gun crimes that are executed in this state are as a result of stolen weapons. So I'm talking about armed robberies, murders of unrelated or unknown people, things like that. They're usually conducted with stolen weapons. Mm-hmm. And this is also another avenue that we need to shore up because people, while you are supposed to report a stolen weapon to the police, it rarely gets reported. And when it gets reported, it gets written down on a report and typically gets put into a file. And if they come across the gun and match the serial number, how they came across that gun, it's after another offense has occurred, mm-hmm. right? So it's reactive once again and we're too late. I was at a gun safety training class that was put on a few weeks ago. And the instructor, who is a retired Fort Worth police officer, that teaches at the academy on these things, said the average response time to a shooting is 3 minutes. So 3 minutes. Now, that's assuming that they do everything right that they're supposed to do. They show up on the scene, they breach the situation, and they disarm or take down the shooter. Right? In the Uvalde situation, they had upwards of 90 people, 90 law enforcement people there, and that went on and on and on. It's consequently 21 people lost their lives, right? But 3 minutes is still a lot of time for somebody to kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
We need to focus on the preventative basis of this. If you say this, if I'm talking to Republicans now, if you say this is a mental health issue, Republicans, okay, let's do a psych eval before you're able to buy a weapon.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I think this is an opportune moment to bring up your opponent, which is one Tony Tinderholt of Arlington. His view, his statement about the Uvalde shooting is that the real issue in his eyes is the school safety, school security. So his quote in the paper: "There's no teeth. There's no one really doing quality inspections on the schools to make sure that every 3 years they're doing these safety and security audits. What I'd like to see is schools prioritizing security over large football fields and natatoriums for swimming. Prioritize, make sure that children are safe, and then go to sports programs and things like that." That's all he's had to say.
Well,
most recently,
I would call that pretty weak tea. Now, on its face, I agree with it. We ought to try to make our schools as safe as we can.
Sure.
But what are you going to do? You're going to build moats around the schools, right? You're going to have, alligators in the moats, drawbridges, and all those kinds of things. There's a point in time when you have to face the facts that people aren't walking into these schools with baseball bats and knives or anything else to commit these crimes. They're using it with weapons that were designed to be used on the battlefield. So Mr. Tinderholt's response to this is a misdirection. Just like the Republican Party and the NRA at large, they will talk to you until they're blue in the face about every possible reason why somebody commits one of these acts of violence, and they will never address the gun issue. So I say let's do both. Let's protect the schools. At the same time, let's figure out how to get ourselves wrapped around an ability of tightening up some of these gun laws and making the environment a little bit safer, because it's a known fact, because we've seen this happen. It's not just a school, it's a church, it's a synagogue, it's a grocery store, it's a hospital, it's a movie theater. Are you going to do hardening exercises on all of those things as well? Probably we ought to take a look at the real cause of this, which are people using guns that are designed to kill lots of people very quickly that should never ever be able to access those things. So I wouldn't expect much more from Mr. Gerard.
No, I don't expect much from him at all. So what about funding our schools, funding education? Because we are also not in the top 50% nationally here in Texas either.
No, we're not. It's an embarrassment, isn't it? So reminds me a long time ago, and again, I'm the oldest guy on the call, so you guys won't remember this, but there used to be a commercial for Pace Picante sauce, right? Guys around a campfire, and somebody was tasting the sauce, and they said, man, where'd this come from? I looked at it and said, New York City. New York City.
Yes.
Well,
I remember that. I remember that.
I don't.
Okay, we just told our age.
Dang. I know, we're aging ourselves now.
Stuff like that on occasion, because who perennially has the best rankings? U.S. News and World Report does some really good work when they go out and they look and they rank the school systems across the nation. And invariably, the top-rated school systems are up in the New England area. It's Massachusetts, Connecticut. It's a little bit further south in New Jersey and things like that. And why? It's because they have made it a matter of purpose and priority to have the best school systems in the country. That's it. It's a stated goal. We could do that here. There's nothing stopping Texas. And as a matter of fact, it's an embarrassment that we're in the bottom half of the country in terms of our school ratings when we ought to be at the top. We ought to be at the top. This is a matter of shame from my perspective, because this state is as powerfully strong economically as we are. The second largest economy in the nation, ninth largest in the world. The first priority should be meeting the constitutional obligations of quality education for all of our kids, right? And what's been going on for the last 20 years? They've been squeezing that harder and harder. They're pushing more of the burden to fund schools over to local communities, right? Which make the local citizens outraged because they can't afford their property taxes.
Yeah.
Then they say, well, you know what? Schools are failing because of whatever reason, and it's typically because they don't have enough money and enough teachers and enough resources and enough textbooks and things like that, because they're slowly starving them to death by eliminating resources. So what's the answer? Move all this to charter schools or private schools. There's a concerted effort right now by many people in the legislature to push funds towards privatizing education in this state.
Vouchers.
And it's horrific. And if you think about vouchers for a moment, essentially vouchers are like getting tuition paid for, right? So you get a coupon, you can go spend that on your annual tuition for your school. Well, these things never cover 100% of the cost. So essentially what you're doing is getting a coupon, which will give you 40, 50, maybe 60% off putting your kid into school. You know what that also does? The people that can afford to send their children to private schools, it gives them a discount. So it's the inverse of addressing the problem in real time. 85% of the students, and there's about 6 million students in our public education system in any given year. 85% of them come from economically distressed areas. Once again, it tells you what the problem is, clear and present. We come number one in spending per pupil. We come number one in average teacher pay. We come number one in providing the best health care and insurance and benefits programs for teachers. Give me 2 or 3 years running in that way, and I guarantee you'll see the economic situation change in the state. You will also see the education outcomes increase significantly in this state. It's a matter of priority, and the Republicans have told you over and over and over again that their priority doesn't lie with improving education. They want to shut it down and privatize it because somebody can make a buck on it.
Well, I just want to add, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say kind of finally, and the general rule in this is if you want to look at any problem hard enough to really kind of understand it, don't focus on necessarily the people that are suffering from the problem. Focus on the people that are profiting from it. Because in this country, in our headlong rush into capitalism and profit, that typically is the thing that's keeping us from being successful in other areas. So it's getting people health care or getting a quality education.
So true. So true.
Well, as someone who grew up in rural Texas, the voucher is not a smart move. And considering Texas is a whole lot of rural, Abbott is not our friend. We will have more than 23 schools shut down, in my opinion.
How many signs did we pass on the way back from our training in Austin that were,
that we actually noticed?
I mean, it was
3 or 4 in a very short rural Texas. Yeah. And it was Texans love Texans love their public schools. Isn't that what it said? Yeah.
Yeah. Texans love their public ed. I mean, truly, because it's from the community. It's within the community. It's very local. So I, as a former teacher, I really appreciate that is an area of focus for you. And, you also tie in and talk about the property taxes, which is a real concern. I mean, it is an issue. I know personally it's an issue.
You want to talk about
Sure.
So let's talk about property taxes. Okay. Everybody I know is going up. It doesn't matter whether you own a piece of property or whether you rent a piece of property. Because if you're a renter, the landlord of that property is going to pass your property tax onto you when you're renting. And they go up. And they will. So one of the problems that we have with property tax is, of course, it's based on value, assessment value of the property. Usually it's separated between land and the improvements on the land, which is the house or something, right? Well, we've seen a couple of things happen. One thing that's happened is that we've got a lot of people moving to Texas, so large growth. And so let's reduce the supply of housing somewhat while they're continuing to build. The other thing we're having is corporate investors are coming up and buying properties and turning them into rental properties. And it's artificially jacking the prices of these houses up significantly. Well, consequently, your appraised value of your home goes up, your property tax bill goes up. Now, municipalities and some jurisdictions will try to leaven that somewhat by increasing their homestead exemption as an example. In taxes that you pay property taxes to a city, you pay taxes to a hospital district, you pay taxes to a school district. It's kind of what makes up your tax bill. Well, there's two kind of property owners in this world. There's residential property owners and then there's commercial property owners, right? We don't see equity in the way that those guys pay in terms of percentage of the value of the property that they own. In the corporate, and as a matter of fact, in the corporate and commercial property side of the house, it's less than 50% of the appraised value usually, because they have lawyers that can protest their tax assessments. They have something called the equal and uniform clause in the tax code that allows them to go lobby on a new building to say, hey, that building across the street that's 50 years old, it's taxed at this. I want my tax rate basically there. And I can take it to court to make that happen. And the jurisdiction doesn't have enough money to go fight them in court. So they give up and say, uncle, okay, fine. And then leave a lot of money on the table. The other thing is we have something called Chapter 313 in the tax code, which allows municipalities to do trade-offs. And particularly this is in school districts. So if I can convince you, Mr. Company, to come into my county and come into my area and build a headquarters and put 50 or 60 jobs there, I will give you a property tax abatement for the next 10, 15 years. Right? And I'm not going to get any value of that. As a matter of fact, it's going to cost me more as a jurisdictional area because I'm going to have to do land improvements and road improvements and all those kinds of things to allow your people to move in and out. What I hope then is that sales tax revenues are going to go up because the people that moved into the area. I'm going to get property tax values going up because of new homeowners coming in and buying more property. Maybe there's some building in the area. It never works out. And so the jurisdiction is always left with their hand out, seeing smaller revenue coming into their areas. And what do they have to do to result and fix that problem? They have to raise the existing property owners' property taxes. And it's always the residential property owner who gets hit the hardest.
Right.
So we've got to fix that. Number one, we've got to get more money out of our corporate citizens that come in here and pay taxes. We've got to get commercial property owners to start paying their fair share. And we've got to get the state to start taking some of the revenues that it gets from the oil and gas industry and other places in terms of its royalty fees and sending that back to the residential property owners. And even I would say, even in some rent relief for renters that are sitting out here to get somewhat of an offset, because it's absurd. People are getting forced out of their homes, own their homes, and they can't pay their property tax bill every year. So we haven't addressed it. We need to address it. What Abbott and those guys are saying is we're going to put a cap on property taxes. You can't go up there. I don't care, Arlington, Texas, or Fort Worth. If you've got to go out and hire 50 more cops and EMT technicians, guess what? That's on you. You got to figure out how to do it. That's ridiculous. It's called an unfunded mandate, and we should not be doing that to our jurisdictions.
Yeah, heard of a few of those in education. So
sorry,
don't trigger me. Okay, so final question, because we do have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, I've really enjoyed this interview, though.
I have too.
Definitely love to have you back.
Yes.
So a favorite personal question of mine, because I think, especially in this era, it really says a lot about you. So no pressure.
No pressure at all.
But what is a skill or just something? It doesn't matter how tiny or small or minor it may seem or big. Totally up to you. But what is something you have learned from a job that has stayed with you, that you have carried through and applied it in other areas?
Okay, so a variety of things, but I'm going to focus on this one because I learned it. I learned it from my father first.
Okay.
Who was the first guy that employed me, and he's also the first person that fired me.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe for another time.
Okay, next time.
But he told me, he said, Dennis, he said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in proportion to each other. And what he meant by that is you need to learn to listen, because he's, and he repeated that over his lifetime to me on occasion. He said, you're a smart dude, but you don't know everything. And if you be quiet and listen to people, you're going to learn more after every conversation. So the thing that I learned, particularly in my business, because I worked in a lot of international business, and I had to go understand how people from different cultures live their lives, negotiated a deal, did their work. So I had to learn how to do something called active listening very quickly. And it's served me very well, not only as a parent, trying to understand what my kids are going through and when they're having their tough times, but also as I move into becoming more of a politician than a political operative. I use that often when I'm listening to people, particularly if they're 180 degrees opposed to me from a political perspective. And the reason that I do that is because I'm trying to find that one little nugget of commonality that we can agree upon, right? And maybe expand the conversation on, and maybe get to the point to where we walk away with a little bit better understanding of each other, and maybe a pathway to move forward on. So that's what I would say, is that active listening, or listening well, is something that I picked up over my lifetime that I try to use on an everyday basis.
Okay, well, that was good.
That's good. I like
it. Great answer. Yeah,
Yeah, that was great.
I think you've passed, and you'd get our endorsement. You're welcome.
So I hope that's the audition.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think yes.
Well, it's been a pleasure being with you guys. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us.
Be sure to tell everybody, though, where they can find more information about you and make donations, sign up to volunteer, all of the things.
Yes, because we always like money, don't we? Okay, so my website is Dennis, so all one word, Dennis, DENNISFOR, TX94.com. So if you go to my website, what you're going to see there is some bio information about me, but you're also going to see, more importantly, what I think about kind of the major issues of the day. I have some commentary there. I have some positions in terms of what I would do if I was elected about it. I have basically kind of a snapshot of where we are today, right? And so those are kind of important. I've also got links to my socials on Facebook and Twitter there. My Twitter handle is DENNIS, the number 4, TX94. Facebook is basically the same thing, but you can get to it through my website. There's an ability to donate if you want to donate on there. I will say a couple things. I love donations very, very much. I want as many as I can, but I also have something every time I have an opportunity to talk about money. We still have a serious hunger problem in this state. There are about 4 million people who live in poverty. That means there are 4 million people that are food insecure. They don't get enough food to eat every day. There are great organizations, and one of them is the Sherrard Area Food Bank. And I volunteer with them right now, and I would heartily recommend that if you're going to give me a donation, carve off 10% of that and send it to the Sherrard Area Food Bank. If you would please do me a favor for that, because we have a significant food insecurity problem, and people need to get food.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all the donations you can give me, and I will put it to great use, but also just think about it if you don't mind. It would be a great honor if you would do that for me. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Dennis, for that. I appreciate that a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being our first guest.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Awesome.
We will leave you with this. Be kind.
Be curious.
Mostly be true to you.
See y'all next Thursday.
See you next Thursday.
Bye. See you next
Bye.
Thursday.